Hey guys, how's it going? Vincent here from thecreativedojo.net. Today I just want to talk about a new product that was just announced over at NAB 2014, and that is the HitFilm Plugins. Now I was lucky enough to get a beta version of these set of plugins here, and today in this video I just want to talk about what they are, what they're good for, the pros and cons, when is it appropriate to use them and when is it not really efficient to use them, and just talk about them just because it's a little bit different than a normal plugin release. And if you want a full overview and detailed analysis and review of HitFilm plugins, I'm going to have a full write-up and review on an article on my site over at creativedojo.net, so feel free to read that article down below. Essentially, these are the plugins that are bundled with HitFilm, and they decided to bring those set of plugins over to other non-linear editors such as After Effects, Premiere, Vegas, Final Cut. And so essentially you get to use these HitFilm plugins within other applications such as these applications I'm using it right now. So there's a lot of pros to this, especially because you get to work in your preferred environment. You don't have to use HitFilm's environment. You can work in After Effects, you can work in Premiere. So first of all, let me start off by saying that the HitFilm plugins are not really geared towards After Effects. Now that may sound a little blunt, but let me explain, and I promise you that there are a lot of pros to the HitFilm plugins other than After Effects itself. But there are a few effects or plugins that I do want to mention, and I think that it's worth knowing because they are pretty cool in After Effects. I think that would be kind of useful to some of you guys out there. But so let me just go ahead and show you some of the plugins. I won't be going over all the plugins because they are the same as the ones in HitFilm. I did a review on HitFilm a little bit earlier. I'll post that article down below as well. But I just want to show you some of the cool effects that you may find interesting that may sway your decision into buying this. By the way, this is a separate product package. It doesn't come with HitFilm itself, so you need to purchase this separately. But if you do own HitFilm, you'll get a discounted price when buying these plugins for other editors. So the first effect I want to talk about here is the Gunfire Effect, and this is probably the most interesting one I think in After Effects, just because it's pretty cool how you can create some muzzle flashes like this right here without using any stock footage. You have full control over pretty much every single parameter here. It's pretty much like a parametric object in Cinema 4D. It's pretty cool. Let me just do a quick RAM preview. So as you can see, it's a pretty decent effect, and it was fairly fast to create. This is kind of a rough draw up here. As you can see, I just masked out all this areas here, but this is a pretty cool thing to do in After Effects without using any stock footage or anything like that. And you have full control over the scale, so we can scale this up to maybe like 400%. You can see that that's scaled up. We can go in here and change the rotation. So let's say maybe like 15 degrees. You can see that it changes the rotation here. So it's a pretty cool thing. You can also change the color of things. So maybe we're trying to create a sci-fi movie and we're going to change it to maybe like a blue or something. So you can try to create these laser effects. You can also control the individual components and sizes of other things like the core flare, the side flare, and all that stuff. And it's a pretty cool effect. And I think if you're into the kind of indie action film, this is a very, very key important factor to consider. But this effect is pretty cool here. And this is something unique that After Effects can't do. In fact, let me show you just kind of a general list of some of the effects that are included in the HitFilm plugins bundle here. So if you go to effect, you can see that we have all these little HitFilm ones, and as you can see, they're very, very familiar. We have blur, we have, a lens blur, a motion blur, a radial blur, zoom blur. Under the color correction, we have some basic stuff like auto color, temperature, white balance, stuff like that. Nothing really too unique here. If you go into color grading, a lot of these are just kind of like presets. You don't have that much fine control over them, like the bleach bypass, day for night. These are really targeted towards beginners, and honestly, I probably wouldn't ever be using these color grading kind of like, I call them presets, even though they're separate effects here. And then you have the distorts, very similar to After Effects distortion, like the bulge and the twirl. You can generate a drop shadow, fractal noise, grid, some basic stuff, pawn, ripple, stuff like that. You have your 4-point gradient, your grunge, like film damage and stuff like that. Some basic keying stuff, nothing that Keylight can't do. Lens flares and lights are something that I want to talk about a little bit later in this tutorial or this demo video right here. You have some matte enhancements, which is a little bit better than After Effects. I have to agree with that. Some pretty fine control over the mattes. Under the particle simulation, I'll be talking about atomic particle a little bit later. We have the fire and the gunfire and the lightning. Pretty interesting. The particles and simulation is probably the most interesting part about the HitFilm plugins. The scene, some basic stuff here. Stylization, the cartoon effect, the emboss, posterize and tint and stuff like that. I don't know why tint is not under, color correction or grading, as well as Cinestyle here, which I'll talk about more about that later in this video. And then we have some, time management things here. Also video cleanup and warp. As you can see, most of them, you're pretty familiar with them in After Effects. And the reason why you're seeing so much redundancy is because HitFilm is kind of a compositor of its own. So it's going to need a keyer, it's going to need blurs, it's going to need glows. And it just so happens that After Effects is also a compositor. So it's going to have its own glows, its own blurs, its own keying solution. So that's the reason why you see so much, redundancy here. So if you're in After Effects, the majority of the HitFilm plugins are pretty much, I wouldn't say obsolete, but they're kind of redundant. The rest of the effects are kind of like what I call fun effects. They're kind of like film damage, film projection, things that kind of mimic certain styles. I kind of think of it as kind of like a little brother to the Red Giant Universe plugins, where you have some fun stuff like Hollow Matrix or Retrograde or Tune It. It has all those kind of fun little things as well. So that's just something to keep in mind here. One thing that After Effects doesn't necessarily have is a grain removal feature. So that's pretty cool here to have if you don't have neat video or something like that. So if you zoom in 200% into this kind of dark area right here, we can go to layer, new adjustment layer. We'll go to effect, we'll go to HitFilm video cleanup, and we'll select grain removal. Now notice how there is a clone stamp and rolling shutter tool, which is pretty useful as well. The video cleanup section is something that After Effects doesn't really have. So we'll go to grain removal. And as you can see, it removes all the grain. Pretty strong, so we'll set it to 15, maybe 2.5, and maybe 0.3. And as you can see, this is the before, and this is the after. And it's a pretty good job at removing the grain. And again, this may not be like a neat video or a Red Giant denoiser, but it certainly gets the job done. And it's just a nice thing to have if you don't already have plugins like these as well. So the second cool thing I want to show you is an effect called Parallax. It's a pretty cool effect. I already have it applied right here. And this is what it looks like here. It's a pretty stationary shot, kind of like a time lapse of this mountain range here. And watch what happens when I increase the parallax depth. You can see that we're getting a really, really cool parallax effect. Now this may not seem like a big deal, but when I first saw it, I was pretty amazed. This could have saved me a lot of time. And I'm not even using a proper height map right now. Actually, I'm not using any height map, but as you can see, just by playing around with this depth here, you can create a pretty nice, cool parallax effect, especially if this is just a background. Maybe you're just trying to create some basic parallaxing. You don't have to mask things out really and just push them in different Z spaces. This will kind of help you just achieve that subtle parallax effect. So if you pay close attention to the sides here, you're going to see that these sides move a little bit faster than the center far away point right here. And as you can see, it gives you that nice kind of parallaxing effect, a very subtle effect that will help you in your composites, especially if you're doing something very large with a lot of depth. So this is a pretty cool feature that After Effects can't really do. I think this is a pretty cool effect. So like I said before, a lot of the effects here are just kind of fun effects or effects that already exist in After Effects. So for an example, we can apply a film damage here. We have some flickering going on. Maybe we can apply something else, maybe like a lens dirt, something like that. So these are just kind of like fun little effects I think are pretty cool, but you're probably never going to use them. I think one of the strengths of these set of plugins is that it's catered towards simplicity. So if you're kind of like a beginner, these effects will really make it easy for you just to get the looks that you want right away. So for an example, if you go to color correction, we don't really even have anything to control the color correction, that precisely. We have like auto color, auto contrast, and it just kind of automatically brings contrast to your shot. We have some basic stuff here, but nothing really to control too much. You also have stuff like fisheye warp, and this kind of gives you that fisheye look, lens distortion. So, these are just kind of like fun effects. Lastly, there's something called atomic particles, which is kind of like trap code form, I would say. It's a particle system, and we can go in here. We can do a lot of things like displace it. We can go in here and control the number of particles. So let's say 200, and we get some nice particles. We can rotate it around. stuff like that. And you can do some mapping with the color, the audio reaction, with motion blur and stuff like that. But the biggest flaw here is that it doesn't really integrate with After Effects cameras. So this is a 3D effect. You can rotate it in Z, you can rotate it in Y, you can rotate it in X. It's a 3D effect within its own effect. But if you go to Layer, New Camera, you're going to see that it doesn't react to the 3D camera in the After Effects, and this kind of renders this thing kind of hard to use just because it doesn't react with other 3D layers. I mean, at least in other particle systems, it actually reacts to the camera movement, so you can kind of fake it sometimes, but this kind of makes it really difficult here. And there are some tricks to go around this, which I'll mention in the article post down below. So before I move on and talk about where these plugins excel, I want to go ahead and thank our sponsors over at Squarespace for making this video possible today. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional online website, store, or portfolio. They have over 20 highly customizable and professionally designed templates. With their click and drag interface, adding content is a breeze, and starting at just $8 a month, you can get a free domain name if you sign up for a year. You can start your free trial of Squarespace by going to squarespace.com. Now, when you do decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the promo code DOJO to get 10% off the life of your order and support the dojo. Squarespace, everything you need to create an exceptional website. So I spent the last few minutes talking about the After Effects workflow and how those plugins, worked in After Effects, and how, I didn't think necessarily that they were really for After Effects. Right now I want to talk about where they really excel, and that's in the editor itself. So whether you're in Vegas, Final Cut, Premiere, these plugins really shine in the editor just because you don't have all these complex controls and, all these compositing tools within these editors. This is the reason why HitFilm excels in these editors here, because all the effects in editors I feel are kind of like lacking. They're kind of poor. I never use them anyways. I only use Red Giant plugins and some other plugins within my my editors here, and I rarely use the stock effects, and this is where the HitFilm plugins come in handy here. So almost all the effects you saw in After Effects, they are actually here in Premiere, so you can actually composite muzzle flashes and bring in lens flares and do blood splatter and fire all within Premiere, and that's pretty cool, I think. You also get all the blurs and all the stuff that you were accustomed to in After Effects. So for an example, I have a shot here. Let me show you something really cool that I think is one of the best color grading or color correction tool in the HitFilm plugins. And surprisingly, it's not under the color grading section of HitFilm. It's actually in the stylize section of HitFilm here, and it's called Cinestyle. And what this thing does is it's kind of like a HitFilm version of Magic Bullet Mojo. So if we apply that to our footage here, you automatically get that kind of cinematic feel. You get the letterbox and you get the vignette. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go to the vignette, and then I'm also going to go to the opacity and just tone down the opacity of the vignette, and watch what happens when I do this. If I set it to like 0.5, it actually doesn't just lower the opacity of the vignette, it actually lowers the opacity of the whole layer. So that's kind of like a big flaw in my opinion, because this is under the vignette section, not the the overall opacity here. Hopefully this will change in another release because I'm using the beta version. I'm just going to turn off the vignette overall here. So we're just focused with the grain here, and I'll focus more on the actual color. So we have the S curve, which kind of controls the contrast of things. I'm just going to lower it down. I'm just going to show you how easy it is and how much control over the kind of like cinematic style color grading here. So if we go into the color adjustments, as you can see, it's a very, very basic language. We have like shift and hue, but what these do is it kind of just shifts color to something else. So maybe I want it to be kind of like this, desaturated look, and just change the hue a little bit. And so just like that, we created this basic color grade with some letterboxing, some grain, some basic grading like this. And if I just hit play, you can see that it's going to play in pretty much real time, no stutter, no lag. And it's because all these effects here, whether you're in After Effects, Premiere, they're all GPU accelerated, so they're very fast, very speedy to work with here. I think it's also very cool that you can actually add some lights into your scene here, so like lens flares, light leaks, whatever. If we go to the lights and flares, we can add in a anamorphic lens flare, and we'll move this above our Cinestyle here, and all of a sudden you have like this crazy heavenly look here. We kind of have like this mystical feel, and this is all done without any After Effects work or anything, all done in Premiere. And let's say we want to add a little fog in here, we can go into the generate tab here, and we can even apply a clouds effect to this thing. Once again, we'll move this above our Cinestyle, and we can go into, you know, the shape, speed, and we can change the blending mode from none to maybe something like screen. And then we just add kind of like a misty haze. Maybe we can go in here and maybe decrease the cloud brightness. So just have like a subtle haze. So before and after. So just kind of like a subtle haze. You know, let's say we apply one more effect just to show you how, you know, useful this thing is in terms of, you know, doing this in your editor. We can go to the particle and simulations. We can add maybe like a rain on glass feature. And we'll move this above our Cinestyle. And we'll go to simulation. We'll go increase the drops per second to like 40. Maybe increase the drop size to like 10. I would change the glass thickness to like 200. We'll adjust the layer distance a little bit. And I think this is pretty cool how you can do this within After Effects. Maybe just simulate like a rainy day, or maybe you're looking out the window on a rainy day. You know, just the pure fact that you can create these kind of visual effects, like raindrops and flares and all that stuff right within Premiere without going to After Effects. I think it's a pretty interesting thing, especially if you're just an editor. You really have no interest in, you know, learning visual effects, maybe learning After Effects. Maybe you just want to focus on the filmmaking and the editing. You know, these plugins can really help you just, you know, get to the point, get your effect across, and kind of just move on to the filmmaking stuff and, you know, those things. So I think that these plugins are perfect for that. They're perfect for doing basic visual effects in the editor side. You get some nice keying options that, you know, don't really come too well with Premiere and stuff like that. You get some pretty decent flares. You get a lot of the After Effects tools that you find in After Effects in Premiere or Final Cut or Sony Vegas. And I really think that this is a huge step up, because a lot of the basic effects or the built-in effects within these editors kind of suck. So these bring, you know, a new option into the editor, which will speed up your workflow without bringing it into HitFilm or After Effects. So this is the reason why I think the HitFilm plugins are really great in the editor itself. They're perfect for editors, but they're kind of redundant in After Effects. Speed-wise, these things are very, very fast. They're very speedy to use. They're very simple to use. As you can see, there's no like complex terminology. Everything's very basic, very simple to use. And I'm really glad that FXhome actually gave us the opportunity to use the HitFilm technology and the plugins in our NLE of choice. So this is a win-win situation, you know, pretty much for everyone. So if you want a full in-depth review over, you know, the HitFilm plugins, what I think about it, you know, this is just a basic summary of it. But if you want a full detailed analysis of it, feel free to check out the article down below, read about it, and let me know your thoughts. Would you purchase HitFilm plugins separately? Would you purchase HitFilm alone? Just stay with it. Would you use it in After Effects, or what application would you use this in? Let me know down below. It's really nice hearing the feedback from you guys, but that's pretty much it for this video, and just a quick overview of some of the HitFilm plugins in After Effects and Premiere. Again, these are not new plugins. These are the same plugins in HitFilm, just brought over to other host applications. So that's pretty much it, guys. My name is Vincent Nguyen from the Creative Dojo. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.